You ever look out at the world and feel like you're watching two completely different movies at the same time? On one channel, you've got this reality of immense complexity, right? Governed by forces and rules that feel, well, distant, almost impersonal. But then, on the other channel, there's this profound sense of intimacy, a direct personal connection to the very source of everything. Well, according to the Zohar, that's not just a feeling, it's actually baked into the cosmic design. So let's dive into this master blueprint and explore how one divine source can intentionally project two vastly different realities onto the world. Our whole journey really kicks off with this incredible verse from Deuteronomy. Now, in Kabbalah, this isn't just a nice saying about secrets, it's literally the source code for reality. And you have to pay attention to the divine names being used here. The hidden things, Ha-Nisra-Rot, belong to YHVH, the name of pure essence. The Zohar unpacks this and says these hidden things are the Yud and the He of the divine name, the deep, concealed inner wisdom. But then it says the things revealed, Ve'Hanagalot, belong to us. That corresponds to the Vav and the final He, which represent the revealed worlds. So right here in this one verse, you have reality being split into two distinct operational systems, one that's hidden and internal, and one that's revealed and external. All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with this huge vision, the Great Concealment. Then we'll break down those two systems and the cosmic architecture behind them. After that, we'll get into how we can actually tap into this system, and finally, we'll bring it all home and talk about what it actually means to live in that direct, unfiltered light. Okay, I want you to picture this for a second. A vast cosmic stage, and across the stage, a great veil is drawn. Now, this isn't some cloth veil. It's made of light and shadow, of consciousness and concealment. On one side of this veil, reality is playing out in a very specific way. But on the other side, it's a completely different story. This is the tale of two worlds, happening at the same time, all coming from the exact same source. This slide really helps us see that fundamental split. Over on the left, you've got this world of filtered light. The Kabbalistas teach that the 70 nations of the world are managed through a system of go-betweens, 70 celestial ministers, or sarim, each appointed to oversee a nation. Their link to the divine is mediated. It's like sunlight passing through a really thick, tinted window. But look at the right. That's a world of direct radiance. The teaching is that Israel was set apart from that system. They aren't governed by any angel or minister. Instead, they stand directly under this unfiltered, pure beam of divine light, a totally intimate connection to the source itself. So we've kind of seen the what, this split in reality. But now, we're going to get into the why and the how. We're moving from that big cinematic picture to the core secret, the sod, of how this whole thing is run. And the secret is this. A single, unified divine source is intentionally projecting and managing two totally separate operational systems. And that brings us to the big puzzle we're here to solve together. If God is one, an absolute total unity, then how in the world can there be two different ways of running things? How can the same source seem so merciful and direct to one group, but so structured, maybe even judgmental and indirect to another? It sounds like a contradiction, but it's really a question of cosmic administration. And the answer is found in the actual mechanics of creation. To try and get our heads around this really abstract idea, let's use a modern analogy that I think helps a lot. Imagine the divine source as this unbelievably complex cosmic operating system, okay? Now, the nations of the world interact with this OS through what we'd call a public API, an application programming interface. They can send requests, they get responses, but their access is limited, it's firewalled, and it's all handled by pre-written functions. But Israel, on the other hand, is given direct root access. They're not just using the apps, they have command line access to the source code itself, to the very kernel of the operating system. This table just lays it out perfectly. For the nations, the interface is through those 70 appointed ministers, the Sarim. The divine name connected to the system is Elohim. In Kabbalah, Elohim represents the divine attribute of din, which means judgment, a system of structured, unbending law. The data flow is mediated. But for Israel, the interface is direct. The divine name is YHVH, the tetragrammaton, which represents the whole integrated system of all the divine attributes. And its core essence is rachamim, or mercy. The data flow is totally unfiltered. I want to be super clear. This isn't two different gods. It is two different interfaces to the exact same divine OS. Okay, analogies are great, but let's pop the hood now and move from the analogy to the actual mechanics. We've been talking about APIs and root access, but what does that actually mean in the language of Kabbalah? We are about to do a deep dive into the Sephirot, the 10 divine emanations that form the actual blueprint, the internal wiring of all of reality. This is the how behind the whole thing.
I want you to think of this like a cosmic waterfall of divine energy. It all begins with Ein Sof, the absolute infinite, which is completely beyond anything we can imagine. The very first step out of that infinity is this single point of primal will called Keter, the crown. From that first spark, the energy flows into the cosmic blueprints, Chakma, wisdom, and Bina, understanding. These are the big ideas, the raw potential. Then, that energy just cascades down through 6 attributes that give the world its character, its texture, things like love, discipline, beauty, endurance. And finally, this entire flow comes to its conclusion in the last stage, Malchut, the kingdom. This is the divine presence as it actually shows up right here in our world, acting as the final interface. And that full name, YHVH, is like a secret code that represents this entire, complete flow of energy from top to bottom.
And here's a really cool insight from the Kabbalists, especially from the book Pardes Remunim. They say these colors aren't literal. They are powerful metaphors for divine actions and how they affect our world. So white, connected to chesed or loving kindness, represents pure, unbounded mercy and peace. Red, the color of Gevurah or judgment, is the fire of discernment, of setting boundaries, of executing structured law. And then you have green, the color of Tiferet, which represents harmony. It's the beautiful, perfect balance you get when you blend the white of mercy with the red of judgment. These are the primary spiritual frequencies that literally build our reality. You know, this famous phrase from the Talmud suddenly takes on this huge cosmic meaning. The law of the kingdom is the law. The kingdom here is the Sephirot of Malchut, that final emanation that directly governs our physical reality. And its main way of operating is din, law, and judgment. The name of God that's associated with Malchut when it's acting as the administrator of the physical world is Elohim. This is the source of all structured reality, the laws of nature, and the system of governance that the nations are managed by. It's that API layer we were just talking about.
So if you take away one thing, this is it. YHVH isn't just another name for God. It stands for the totality of the Sephirotic system, that inner reality where mercy, Rahamim, is the dominant force. It's the name of essence. Elohim, on the other hand, represents one specific function inside that system. It's the attribute of Gevurah, judgment, as it's expressed through Malchut, kingdom. It's the name of manifestation, the outer reality of structured law. Israel's connection is to the whole integrated system, to YHVH. The nation's interface is with that specific manifest function, with Elohim.
I know, these are incredibly deep, really abstract concepts. So to make sure this all really lands and makes sense, we're going to try explaining the whole system again, but using 2 different powerful analogies. We'll start with one that's a little more fun and intuitive, and then we'll shift to one that's a bit more technical and precise. Okay, let's start with the video game model. Imagine reality is a massive online game. The game developer, that's the divine source, Ein Sof. Now, the nations of the world are kind of like non-player characters, or NPCs. They're essential to the game, they're part of the world, but they operate on a script. Their actions are overseen by their own game masters. Those are the celestial Serim. Israel, in this analogy, are the player characters. They have free will, a totally unique main quest, and, critically, a direct line to the developer through prayer and performing mitzvot. And the Torah, with all its secrets, that's the developer console. It's like a command line that lets players who know the secret codes directly influence the physics and events of the entire game world.
All right, now for a more technical angle, let's look at this through a cosmic engineering model. The divine source, Ein Sof, is the core architecture. It's the power plant. The world of Absolute, with its 10 Sephirot, is the operating system kernel. It's the core set of libraries that everything else depends on. Israel is given root user privileges. This means they can access the kernel directly using the system-level name YHVH to perform these deep system commands called Yekudem. The lower worlds are just the application layer, where all the programs are running. And the nations, they are limited users. They interact with the whole system through a firewalled API, those Serim, which act like daemon processes, managing requests and only serving up specific process data under the name Elohim. They just can't get direct access to the kernel.
Okay. We've been way out there looking at the cosmic map, we've checked out the engineering schematics, but what does any of this actually have to do with us, right here, right now? Well, in this final section, we are going to bring this entire massive blueprint down to the most personal level there is, the human soul. How does knowing all this change our lives and our own connection to the divine? So get this. The Kabbalists teach that the entire structure of the cosmos is perfectly mirrored inside the structure of your own soul. Your soul isn't just some vague, mysterious life force. It is a piece of seriously advanced spiritual technology. It's made of different levels. Nefesh, the soul of action, Ruach, the soul of emotion, and Neshama, the soul of intellect. And these aren't just random parts. They form a built-in terminal perfectly designed to interface with and access the divine operating system. So what's the ultimate expression of this direct access? What's the goal? It's this concept of the tzaddik, the righteous person, as a Merkavah, a divine chariot. This describes a human being who has so completely refined themselves, so perfectly aligned their own will with the divine will, that the Shekhinah, the divine presence, can literally reside within them. When that happens, the person themselves becomes the interface. The divine flow completely bypasses the entire angelic hierarchy, the whole API system, and manifests directly through the thoughts, words, and actions of that one individual. It's incredible. And this connection isn't just an on or off switch. It happens in stages. And these stages correspond to the levels of our own soul. When we purify our actions, our nefesh, we connect to the angelic level of the ophanim, the wheels of the divine chariot. When we refine our emotions, our ruach, we can connect up to the level of the chayot, the living beings from Ezekiel's vision. And when we truly elevate our mind and consciousness, our neshama, we can connect all the way up to the throne of glory itself. Our spiritual state literally determines our bandwidth and our access level. The purity of our actions, emotions, and thoughts is what tunes our soul to these different divine frequencies. This chart really helps put it all together. The standard default mode for the world during the weekdays is governance through that angelic hierarchy, what you might call the API. That's bar one. But the potential for direct governance through a righteous person, a tzaddik, is always there. That's bar two. And then on Shabbat and in the future Messianic era, the whole system switches modes. Direct governance becomes the new default for everyone. The veil's lifted and all of Israel gets to experience that unfiltered, radiant light. And to bring this all to a close, we come to this just staggering statement from the ancient sages. The patriarchs themselves were the chariot. Hayavot hen ha-Merkavah. This shows us that this whole idea isn't something new. It's the absolute foundation of this spiritual path. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob reached such a profound level of alignment with the divine that they became the living, breathing vehicle for God's presence in this world. They were the living proof that a human being can become the ultimate interface for direct connection. So, I'll leave you with this final question, one that brings this huge cosmic journey right back down to you, right now. If your soul is really a terminal, hardwired with the potential for root access to the divine operating system of reality, then what command are you choosing to run today? Because every thought, every word, every action is a line of code. Are you running a command that calls on the limited API of structured law? Or are you writing a command that accesses the deep, unified kernel of mercy? Thank you so much for joining us for this complete journey through the Pardes. We really hope these ancient truths help you and your family improve your own dimensions this week. If you enjoyed this full chapter deep dive, please do like, subscribe, and share which part of the journey touched your soul in the comments. We'll see you in the next chapter.